Right, so the national interest has published an article. Ukraine's F-16 pilots think NATO tactics don't work. Though Ukrainian pilots have praised the F-16 itself, they've criticized NATO tactics for relying too much on air superiority, a luxury that Ukraine does not have. If you remember when they first got it, they did some training in the U.S. and other places. Remember Juice, part of the initial cadre, unfortunately lost his life. Typically, the way it works is you start off in transition, you fly with an instructor in a D model, then you go to solo that you're being chased by another instructor in an F-16. Then you do your Form 8, which allows you to get an instrument ticket, essentially instrument check ride. And then you start off with basic fighter maneuvers. You go back. Let's go back. In the initial part, you do advanced handling characteristics and instruments. Then you go to basic fighter maneuvers, offensive, defensive, high aspect, air combat maneuvering, intercepts on how to run the radar and work as a two-ship. And then you move up to a more advanced air-to-air phase, larger force exercises, defending points, stuff like that. Then you do surface attack. So basic surface attack, which is dropping dumb bombs, laser-guided bombs, GPS-guided bombs. And then that culminates in kind of a self-escort strike, as the Navy would call it, but some level of large force exercise with offensive counter-air, and you're dropping bombs on a target. Obviously, a lot of stuff has changed since I did it, but that's the basics of what you get. That's the basic footprint. These guys were trained using some of those techniques, and a lot of it is based, we always run this problem as we fight for the last war, right? A lot of counterinsurgency, close air support stuff, and then what we think is the next war, which for us, the China threat, the near peer adversary, where you have an established line that you're defending or that you're going into, and you have to do some kind of defensive counter-air, offensive counter-air, first day of the war kind of stuff, and it's all integrated. We saw that with the Venezuela mission, where it was you had air, land, sea, space, everything was integrated. These guys don't have that luxury. So what they talk about here is that, yep, it's a 50-year-old jet. In 2023, they got the first F-16s in Ukraine, and it hasn't quite lived up to the hype, which I talked about this before. It was never going to be the game changer that everybody said it was going to be, because you need logistics, you need training, you need experience. And the other part too is you were taking pilots from Russian equipment, which is not compatible with US equipment. It's very different. And trying to put them in American jets in a very short amount of time, there's going to be a learning curve there. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's just not right. Like a MiG-29 is not the same as an F-16. HUD, it's in metric, unless they had a mod or something, but typically it's in metric. All the gauges are in metric. The ADI is different. The way the radar works, MiG-29s are very ground-controlled intercept dependent versus F-16s, which are a little bit more autonomous. A lot of stuff that is just not Soviet doctrine versus Western doctrine. You know, it's just different stuff. So they had to unlearn the Russian design cockpits of the Sukhoi and the MiGs that they try, and then NATO style fighter tactics, because we operate more autonomously. We operate assuming certain things that they just don't have. But they talked about a Ukrainian pilot in this video.
Ту тактику, яку нас навчали за кордоном, вона не зовсім підходить. Приходилось сідати, продумувати тактику застосування, як ми будемо знищувати крилаті ракети, ударні дрони.
Cool Viper, though.
В серпні місяці були перші бойові вильоти на знищення повітряних цілей.
Aim 9 shot.
У 16-му вже більше 1000 удар. Було щось.
But anyway, what the translation says is, we came home from training, we faced reality. The tactics we were taught abroad were not entirely suitable for the war we were fighting. Because those tactics are based on wars our partners fought in the past, and this war is fundamentally different. I would say not just that, but the integrations, right? U.S. and NATO allies have a certain footprint that we bring to bear. The Ukrainians are kind of doing this all alone. So, and they're trying to integrate with their Russian aircraft, the Sus and the MiGs. And so that's a different world than what we are used to. And as it talks about here, they're fighting a different threat. Most of what they got into was drones, cruise missiles, et cetera. In fact, one of the aircraft lost was trying to shoot down drones. That's a much different tactical problem, especially when the cruise missiles are being launched behind Russian lines, hypersonic missiles, et cetera. They're being launched from far away. So you're not allowed via the ROE, you're not allowed to go in and clear the air picture against the Russians because they're on their own territory and it's so close together. Usually we have some standoff distance when we look at wars, and being able to take off and not be in a missile engagement zone of a double-digit SAM is important. These guys don't have that luxury. They take off and, SA-20, SA-10s, they're right in the mez there as soon as they get airborne. So they have to stay low. They have to stay away from that threat ring. And now they have to chase down the drones, which are very small. I don't think any of these F-16s have ESAs. So it's the old mechanically scanned array radar or mechanically scanned radar. And they're harder. I mean, it's harder to lock stuff up. It's harder to find stuff. They have to go chase down these drones and shoot them with either a missile, which is expensive because they don't have a lot. They do have AIM-120s and AIM-9s, but they don't have a lot of them. Or gun it, which is a very hard thing to do. And same thing with these cruise missiles. So they're spending a lot of time and energy doing stuff. And this wasn't part of the training because this is not something we typically have trained for. Now, is it something we should train for? Yes, because this battlefield has shown us the future of air combat. It has shown us what it may look like, and that evolving and emerging technologies are putting us in this position with drones. And we saw this in Yemen a lot, and the Israeli stuff where we had F-15 Strike Eagles and F-16s and Hornets, Super Hornets going out and having to do this. So since these guys got the training, the U.S. has obviously gotten more experience doing this, but at the time it was relatively new, and it just shows you that it's always evolving. There's always something going on. But it says, in addition, F-16s are employed in a role few Western pilots encountered in the past, destroying cruise missiles and drones. Yeah, back then that was true. Now less so. And they had to figure it out. Destroy cruise missiles, attack drones, how to fight the enemy close to the front lines. And close to the front lines is a big one, because when you take off and you're automatically in that weapons engagement zone, it's tough. You can't go and climb up to medium altitude and get yourself in a position to kind of get the picture, let the picture settle, figure out what you're looking at. You're airborne and you're immediately in it. And, respect to those dudes, because they had to make up the tactics. They had to come up with how to fight this. And I think the lessons learned they transmitted back has been instrumental in the fight against other drones and such. And we don't even get it right. I mean, we shot down our own Hornet trying to defend against drones. So, I mean, it's not an easy problem to tackle. Yeah, it says they have to fly lower to avoid threats from surface-to-air missile systems. It makes it harder for the enemy radars. Biggest challenge for us was the enemy air threat, which kept us from getting to the target. We worked in a group of 3 planes and forced the enemy to launch 2 missiles from different directions. As a result, we gave our strike plane the chance to destroy the target and let the whole group return safely to the airfield. I mean, they have a different threat than what we've talked about or trained to, and we will get lessons learned from it just like they are. But they are obviously very skilled pilots, good pilots, to be able to make this stuff up on the fly. It says they've adapted their tactics. Results speak for themselves. They've intercepted 1,300 missiles and drones, and one F-16 was credited with downing 6 cruise missiles in a single sortie, with 2 destroyed by the gun. Amazing. They've also done strikes destroying 300 targets. including Kremlin vehicles, Russian command posts, ammo depots, drone control centers, and multiple logistics facilities. Wow. Perhaps NATO pilots could learn a few lessons. They 100% are. I guarantee you that. I saw that article. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about because it's a good follow-up from the F-16 stuff we've talked about in the past. We knew that wasn't going to be the game changer, right? Because number one, you can't get enough F-16s to make that big of a difference. But number two, in order to save the F-16, you can't just operate willy-nilly. You can't just be up there and expect not to get shot at. So they have to stay low. They have to avoid threat rings and stuff like that. There's a lot that goes into it. And to their credit, they've done more with less. They've done a great job with what they've had, but it's still been a challenge for them. And I'm sure logistics and training for maintainers, which is very important, all that stuff has been stuff they've had to learn because, it's not the greatest environment for that jet. It's not. The F-16 needs a lot of support, maybe not as much as a 5th gen fighter, but it still needs quite a bit of support and ground handling and stuff. And the fact that they've been able to keep them airborne and do what they've done is still a testament to their resolve and their innovation for taking those jets and making the best of them. And they've also done it with other aircraft, right? They've gotten Mirages, they've gotten other, I guess, donations from other countries, and they've got this kind of mixed fleet in the Air Force, and they're doing the best they can and surviving. And I think you got to give them credit for that. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode.